Good evening. On Tuesday, June the 28th, voters will go to the polls to determine who will represent them in the Oklahoma Senate. And in preparations for this election, the Stillwater League of Women Voters are pleased to present this evening's Candidates Forum. I'm tonight's moderator, Gladine Allred, with the Stillwater League of Women Voters, and we are pleased to present this evening's Candidates Forum. I would like to state that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization, and if we don't have at least two candidates of either party, we cannot hold a forum. And so this evening we did plan to have, following the Senate forum, a forum for the House of Representatives, but only one candidate was able to come, so we could not have a forum with only one candidate, because we are nonpartisan. Thank you. Before I describe the format and the rules, I will introduce the candidates, and they are Tom Duggar and Miguel Najera. To begin the forum, each speaker will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and no verbal questions will be allowed from the audience. You may phone or text your questions, and the number is right there behind me. You can see 405-332-6063, and some league member will answer and relay the questions to the moderator. Handwritten questions from the audience will be accepted on the index cards that are provided, and I have a number that you have submitted, and I appreciate it. You may sign your name to the card, but your name will not be read. So if you have a question for the candidates, please write it on a card provided and submit it to a league member. Just raise your hand. Designated league volunteers will review the cards before giving them to the moderator in order to eliminate duplication of questions only. Questions involving personal issues or character assassinations will not be accepted, and specific questions cannot be directed to a specific candidate because both candidates may answer each question asked by the moderator. Please hold all applause and vocal approval or disapproval until the end of the forum. The official timekeepers will notify each candidate, it's Ann, the time that he has left. You'll be notified when you have 30 seconds left and 15 seconds left, and at the timekeeper's final signal, the red stop card, the speaker must stop. After the question and answer section of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. And before we start this evening's forum, we ask all spectators to please turn off your cell phones or put them on silent. Okay, the candidates have drawn for opening statements, and the candidate that won the toss decided that, Tom Duggar will go first. You ready?
I want to make sure it's on. Thank you, Gladine. I want to start off this evening, it's good to be here. I'm glad the League of Women Voters are holding this forum, and it's great to see an audience here as well as the television audience that is watching, because it shows concern for where we are today, and that is really important. I want to talk about several things today, and I want to talk about budget particularly, and all of us know that is a significant problem area. I want to talk about budget because I believe I have the experience, I believe I have the knowledge to be able to make a difference in the budget at the state of Oklahoma and cure some of the problems that we have had in the past. Why do I say that? Simply, I'm a certified public accountant. I have had a firm in Stillwater since 1986. I also was after college for several years, was with a national accounting firm and with one of the largest industrial companies in the state of Oklahoma. All that lends to experience, and I think that's really, really important, and there's 3 things to be said that I want to bring up tonight, and I'm sure that they will be in some of the questions. And I call those B, basically budget, and it underlies each of the other things that we will talk about, and the other ones are education and the economy. I think those are critical. My wife and I have been involved in many issues of the education over the years. She's a 34-year retired teacher in the Stillwater Public School System. Both of us serve currently on educational committees at the OSU, as we're on the Associates of Education, and I'm also a distinguished member of the advisory board for the School of Accounting. I think all of these things are very, very valuable, and I want to talk about those this evening, and I look forward to visiting with you further.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Duggar. Okay, Mr. Nahara?
Thank you. Thank you again to the League. As Mr. Duggar said, I appreciate the opportunity to come out and talk this evening. Just a little about myself. I'm from Ponca City. I grew up in Ponca, and I moved to Stillwater to attend Oklahoma State University. I attended OSU and graduated. After graduation from OSU, I joined Oklahoma Farm Bureau Insurance Company. I've been a property and casualty adjuster with them for about 4.5 years now. My wife, Lauren, who is over here, if you're not in the audience, you can't see her, but my wife, Lauren, and I were married in 2013. Lauren is a sexual assault counselor at Wings of Hope here in Stillwater. She's a graduate of Oklahoma Baptist in her undergraduate and her master's, and so we are blessed to live in Stillwater. As many of you know, I was elected to the Stillwater City Council in 2014. I'm obviously a younger guy, and so I decided at an early age that I really wanted to get involved, and I wanted to start making a difference early, and so that's why I ran for city council. I was thankful enough to get elected, and it's kind of weird being on this side because I actually sit over there, but I'll get used to it. But I've enjoyed my time on city council, and that's why I'm running for the state senate. I really have enjoyed the opportunity to meet with so many great citizens in Stillwater, and I didn't realize the impact I could make while serving on the council, but I've seen that, and so I really want to try to take that to the state senate, and that's why I'm running, and I look forward to the discussion tonight, and I look forward to answering the questions that you have. So thank you so much for letting me be here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nahara. All right, the first question, and here we will start with you, because we're going to alternate questions and answers. First, this questioner says, Representative Governor Bellman reformed common education and raised the needed taxes to pay for such. The past 4 years, taxes have been reduced and education reforms decimated, with most advisors estimating it could take several years for oil revenue to return. So the question is, how will you work to raise the taxes to fund our educational system so we can get out of the bottom 10 states nationally?
Well, I think it's a combined effort. I think we just need to get back to working together. I think it's not going to be one of us fixing it. I think it's a matter of just making sure that across the board the state values education. I said this afternoon in a forum we had that in this Senate district we're not going to have any problem valuing education, and we're going to fight for education because we're an education community. But I think we need to get the other legislators on board with us. We need to get them to see what's happening in Payne County, to see what we're doing with our education and how they're thriving. We need to get them to care about it so that we can figure out ways to fund it. I don't believe in raising taxes to fund the education. I feel like we're tying people's hands when we have to do that. I'd like to look at other issues to try to solve those solutions. I think and we'll probably talk about it later, but there's certain incentives and rebates out there that we should have looked at to cut more of so that we could have funded education through those problems. I think there's an online sales tax problem that we're not collecting online sales tax. We're losing millions and millions of dollars a year that could go directly into education. I think there's other options. That's not a new sales tax. I should say that. That's already on the books. It's just not being collected. So I think there's options out there other than raising sales tax or raising taxes to begin with.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Duggar.
We obviously have a serious shortage in education this year. That's a result of having a very difficult budget. However, when you have a difficult budget like that, it's time to take action, and that action can come about from a number of ways. Primarily, the legislature needs to realize and step forward and say, this is a priority for our state. As I've been going around the county during this political period, if you will, campaigning period, I've had person after person tell me that education has to be the top. Our people of this county value education for their children. They value education for their grandchildren. They understand that having appropriate financing and the allocation of that out of the state is something that's needed to be done to help the economy, to help the educational level that we have for our people, that they can handle good jobs. It is just vital. There's lots of things that can be done there, and that includes, I'm going to run out of time on this one, that includes looking at every option, including savings. Use tax was mentioned, not sales tax, but use tax, and it is very important that we follow up, and the legislator has started that.
Okay, thank you. There are a number of questions on education. As you said, that is a priority. This is related, and it says, please state your opinion on David Boren's proposal to raise a 1-cent sales tax for education, including a $5,000 annual increase of every teacher for every teacher. And that we will start with you, Mr. Duggar. Your opinion.
Dr. Boren's proposal, called the Boren Plan by many, is an option that has been given to the people of Oklahoma to be able to state where they themselves value education. It's one of the things as the legislature changed the base amount and so forth, they put us in a situation where that becomes a critical question for the citizens of Oklahoma to decide what's best. I'm a big believer in that letting the people decide is one of the most important things we can possibly do. And I am dedicated to supporting the decision made by the people of Oklahoma on this issue. It's a tough issue. It has situations to where it affects municipalities on their ability to raise funds to do their operations. It affects the economy. But these are drastic times on that, in this area, and I believe that is something that the citizens will be able to discern the direction that they want to take this state in the future, and I will be wholly in support of that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nahara.
Yes, so,
You want me to repeat it?
sure.
Please state your opinion on David Boren's proposal to raise the 1-cent sales tax for education, which includes a $5,000 annual increase for every teacher.
Okay. So my opinion is it's unfortunate that we have to have it. I personally do not support it, but I do think it'll pass in the state. I think there's a lot of support for it out there. That doesn't mean I don't support public education. I absolutely do support public education. I have a lot of educators that are helping me in my campaign. But again, and I'll say it, and I'll probably say it numerous times, it's unfortunate that this is the option, that our option is to raise taxes on those who can barely afford to make rent or to decide what food option they're going to buy at the grocery store, because now they're going to have to pay more taxes. And so for my family, me and my wife, we came to the decision we don't support it. I do think it'll pass, but and if it doesn't pass, then I'll do everything I can to help teachers to get a $5,000 raise or to get even more of a raise. And I'll do everything I can to fund public education, but I personally do not support it.
Okay, well, thank you. A few more questions. Concerning education, this person writes, school administration costs are very high in Oklahoma, and we're starting with you. What would you do concerning the large number of school districts and the large number of school superintendents in Oklahoma?
You know, again, I think it just goes back to discussion with the school districts. I don't know if we should be the ones that say what schools should be cut. I think that has to be a county discussion. And in Payne County, we have 6 school districts. Is that too many? Well, some of the smaller districts would say, no, it's not, because their school is their town. And so if we close those schools or if we cut those administrators, what's the town losing? And so I think that question's easier asked than answered. I will say I'll look at that. I'll talk with the administrators. I'll talk with the superintendents in the district. Are they getting paid too much? Are there too many? Maybe, probably. But I don't think that's an easy decision, and it's not one that I can make up here and say that that's going to happen. But I can tell you, if it's a waste and if it's something we can change or need to look at, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Duggar.
First and foremost, we have to make sure our educational delivery that educates students is top flight, and we don't want to do things that will damage them. Given that situation, the Oklahoma legislature looked at it this year and decided that there would not be a consolidation. It's a tough political issue. It's one that the schools are likely to solve themselves as expenses go forward, and they have to make decisions on how to best do that. And I think that we're going to have to leave this mostly to the schools because they have the ability as well as the budgets that they're going to have to manage themselves that come from the state. And I think that will probably result in some consolidation. And that gives each community the opportunity to structure things within that district that will help them the most. And so I think that's the course of action that I believe will be followed.
Okay, thank you. Now, this questioner asks, my understanding is that you both, and this is for both of you, hope to serve on the Education Committee. What experience and qualifications do you bring to this committee? And we start with you, Mr. Duggar.
Very simply, I initially said something about that when we first started the discussion. I came to Oklahoma State University with the intention of becoming an accountant. I've been pretty successful of that, even if I'm the one who has to say that. I've got a bunch of national awards for the accounting and support through the Small Business Administration, and in fact, a national award from the Small Business Administration for supporting small business and its development. All of these give me the background education that I believe I can understand, direct, and improve the budget process in the state of Oklahoma. I want to be in education because I'm committed to improving the overall status of education in Oklahoma, because it means not just so much in Payne County, but it means so much in our state. We have a responsibility to educate our children. We have a responsibility to educate grandchildren, and we have a responsibility to have alternative type education available for our citizens. It will make a difference in the economic standard that we have in this state, and it's vital that we do that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nahara, what experience and qualifications do you bring to serving on the Education Committee?
I guess experience, let's see, I was in public education when I was growing up. I went to a public university. I serve on a city council that deals closely with a public university and a major college, and so I think that gives me some unique qualifications to deal with some of the things that they have to work on. And then I feel like I'm a great communicator. I work well with people, and so I don't necessarily know if my qualifications are the thing that's most important. I think it's the people that I can lean on, or the people that I can call when there's an issue on that committee, that I can get the answer from the experts who have spent many years in that field. And so I think just working all together on that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we'll move to another subject, and this person says, what do you think about Freeport exemption for oil and gas companies? And we're starting with you, Mr. Nahara. And would you work with local officials to have stricter regulations for the schools?
Yes, so I would definitely work with James Cowan on this, county assessor. I think that's money that's could go into ad valorem taxes. That's money that could be put into the schools. It's not money that's going to be put on the backs of those who can barely afford to live. And so I definitely think it's something we need to look at. If there's certain standards that need to be tweaked, if there's more ways to make sure that we're not burdening them too much by taking some of those exemptions out, but we're still working together to get more money into our classrooms and more money into our county, then I definitely think it's something we should look at. I would absolutely work with him on that, yes.
Okay.
There are certain exemptions that exist, and Freeport is one of them. It doesn't necessarily go just to oil and gas. It goes to a lot of things. It goes to the manufacturers in the state of Oklahoma. Freeport is important because it's a component of their cost of goods sold. It is a component of their product that they're making. If you put that in at two levels of taxation, you may well be double taxing them and putting your own industries at a competitive disadvantage in the state. I don't think that's necessarily a good deal. Freeport has worked well in the past. I'm not a knee-jerk type person. I've said before on credits that they are valuable when they meet their goal. I am not opposed to looking at any and all of the credits that are available in this state to determine which ones are meeting the goals that was originally set for them, and if they are not on a sunset schedule of review, then they should be replaced.
Okay, thank you. A few questions more about oil and gas drilling. This person, and we start with you, Mr. Duggar. This person would like to hear your thoughts on oil and gas drilling and the possibility of incentives to help subsidize recycling and reuse.
First off, we've talked about incentives already, so I'm going to skip around that just a
Okay.
little bit.
All right.
So the oil and gas industry and so forth, we got to understand that it is a major industry in the state of Oklahoma. It provides roughly 1/3 of our entire budget. And so we need to work together. And part of that working together comes from the Corporation Commission, who, for instance, in the Cushing area, has decided that the injectable water and so forth needs to be cut back. We don't know exactly where that's going to go, but they've hired some really eminent professionals to look at this area. I think with their guidance, we're going to find out more and more and be willing to take steps to best provide not only a base of education for the oil and gas people who are part of this economy and spend lots of money in the economy, and also to cover people with the homes that have been shaken by earthquakes and so forth like that. We will get a better conclusion over time. We're in the process of learning what that is right now.
Okay.
Can you read the question one more time?
All right.
Sorry.
The person writes, we would like to hear your thoughts on oil and gas drilling and possibility of incentives to help subsidize, I think you addressed that, recycling and reuse.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of science out there that part of the problem is the injection process, and so I definitely think if we can figure out a way to make that process better and somehow incentivize that, sure, but I think if we incentivize that, we've got to take it from another portion that we incentivize for them. Right? We can't incentivize the entire process, and so if we do that, yes, but I would want to take it from somewhere else.
Okay, well, I think this question is related to that. I mean, it is related. What is your position on water well injections resulting from fracking and the correlation with earthquakes in the state? I think we were kind of addressing that. Do you want to say anything?
I'll just follow up, same question. Same answer.
Same answer, okay.
That's fine.
That's fine?
That's fine.
Same answer, all right. Okay, then this person says, how would you divide the financial pie among prisons, education, roads, mental health, and public health? Who gets the largest slice? And that would
Is that
be
mine
you.
first?
That would be you.
Okay. We have income coming into this state from agriculture. We have income coming in from operations of service and fees, and we have income coming in from oil and gas. Those are our primary three areas of the state government that you get income. There are peripheral deals with fees and so forth, but they're small in comparison to those three things. You take a look at each one of these things, and then we have expenditures going out on the other side. We have prisons, we have DHS, and we have education on the side. I think education has proven that it deserves the significant part of the pie from the standpoint that it is the only one of the three that generates a positive GDP for this state when we need it so much right now. There may be a time in the future that we can adjust those formulas, but right now they are absolutely critical that we take a look at it. It's a known fact that for every dollar put into the education network at the present time, it returns $4.72. Look at your own purse. Take a good hard look at your wallets. You'll find out real quickly that that's a good investment. We all have probably gone out and tried to do investments from time to time. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. This is a proven work. Education should be a winner in this regard.
Okay, how would you divide the financial pie among prisons, education, roads, mental health, public health? Who gets the largest slice?
So I would agree with Mr. Degger on that. I think education is our future. If we don't have an educated society, we don't have a future. We don't have an economy. We have to have people that are educated, that know how to work the jobs, that know what how the economy works. And so, to me, education would get the biggest share.
Okay, now we're moving on to prisons, and this several questions related to that. Discuss your opinion about, and we start with you, your opinion about lowering prison time for those incarcerated for selling marijuana or other drugs.
Well, I think there's going to be a state question about that, or I think there's several state questions that are dealing with criminal justice reform in Oklahoma, so I think we'll see more about that coming up. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think part of the problem, though, we need to make sure that there isn't underlying offenses with that. We have to make sure that if it's just a low-level offense, sure, maybe a ticket's going to be better in that situation. We're spending too much on prisons as it is. We're housing inmates. We're just putting people in there and throwing away the key. So absolutely, I think if we can figure out a way to lower the prison population in our state, I think anything would be on the table on that. And so I definitely would be in favor of reviewing that, absolutely.
Okay, and your response.
Read the question again, please.
Okay. Discuss your opinion about lowering prison time for those incarcerated for selling marijuana or other drugs.
Okay. During my career and so forth, at one point in time, I was the chief enforcement officer for the Oklahoma Accountancy Board. You had to make decisions many times on whether a person would be allowed to sit for the CPA exam. Those decisions then were, of course, reviewable by the entire accountancy board. I found out by doing that those minor mistakes that people initially make are different than a person who continually makes those. We structured a program that we tried to realize that so that we didn't disenfranchise people who made a bad decision but correct it and move forward. There is a big difference in my mind, and that's what we need to be doing with our prisons also. We need to structure it in such a way that it gives credit for what they did from a standpoint of where it's taken them and what they've done to make it better. If they have a continual situation, multiple DUIs and so forth, at each level, there have to be consequences for the actions you take. And I think we need to structure our legal system and our prisons to do that.
Okay, and this person also, it's a similar thought, and we're starting with you, Mr. Duggar. What are your thoughts about releasing nonviolent criminals from our prisons?
I think I've settled it there when you already in this particular regard. Nonviolent criminals and the white collar, if you will, I think there's things that can be done. That doesn't mean that they're completely out free. It means that they may have requirements placed on them and guidance to where they can become productive, people within our society, and at the same time help pay back some of the costs that they have created for the people that were victims. Those are all important factors. So I'm in favor of looking at those type of things and seeing what programs we can develop to accomplish that.
Okay, Mr. Nahara.
Can you read the question?
What are your thoughts about releasing nonviolent criminals from our prisons?
I would much rather favor rehabilitation. I agree with Mr. Duggar on that. I think if we can make them productive members of society and not let them just spend their time in the prison system and we pay for them $22,000 a year and then they come out with all these fines and fees, yeah, I'd much rather let them stay out in society, try to work, try to make a living, pay back the crime or the punishment or whatever they took from someone or whatever their offense was, let them have an opportunity to pay that back rather than releasing them into society just to fail again. So absolutely, I think that's something we should look at.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start with you. What is your opinion about legalizing medical marijuana?
Can I pass that to Mr. Duggar? I've been asked this a lot. I haven't made up my mind. I think Colorado has seen some successes with it. I've read a lot of different articles on some of the successes and some of the failures. And so for one hand, it'd be a lot of revenue, but on the other hand, is it opening up the book for other crimes or other offenses, or is it a gateway drug? I mean, I think there's some questions out there. And so I'm not taking a stand on that at this point. And so I'll keep myself undecided.
Okay, Mr. Duggar.
First off,
this is medical marijuana. We're
I
talking
understand
about.
that. First off, Colorado has a lot more than medical marijuana, and I think
Oh,
all of us
sorry,
know
I thought
that.
It was normal marijuana. I apologize.
And
I misunderstood the question. Sorry about that.
And with that particular type of situation, that's one of the reasons, I guess, that the state of Oklahoma has a lawsuit against the state of Colorado. It's still a federal crime. So things have to change for us to be able to do that. There's a reason probably that it's a class-rated drug. When I was in the Army, there was a lot of marijuana around the military post at the time. I saw the reaction of people and I saw what was happening to them. Medical marijuana, in the strictest sense of the word, could potentially provide benefits. I would be willing to look at those, but I do not, under any circumstances, believe that it's appropriate to have marijuana open in this state.
Okay. The next two questions, they're similar. I think maybe I'll ask this more specific one that says the Ten Commandments issue has made headlines. Do you favor allowing the monument on government property? Why or why not?
In the forum we had today, we were asked that question. I stepped up and said one thing: yes. Now let me go into that a little bit further. The state of Texas has already done that. They have, through historical marker programs and so forth, created the Ten Commandments back in their area of state government. If we choose to do that, we can accomplish the same thing, and we can use some of the models of Texas to go about that. Just because they're Texas doesn't mean we have to dismiss them every time. Sometimes they have good ideas down there, and sometimes they take good people. My wife and I have a son down there and a daughter-in-law, and we'll still claim them, even if they are Texans. But I think that this is one of the areas that I feel strongly about. It's an issue for me. It's not just a monument. It's an issue of faith in Oklahoma, which is one of the most conservative Bible Belt states that we can possibly have. And our standard of living here, because of that, is what everybody else wonders. Why is it as good as it is? I'm not talking monetary. I'm talking cultural background here, and I think that's really important.
Okay, Mr. Nahara.
Let me make sure I get the question right.
Okay. The Ten Commandments issue has been in the headlines. Do you favor allowing the monument on government properties? Why or why not?
I'm not opposed to the monument being on public property or at the state capitol, but I do not believe that we should be going to lawsuits over this. I don't believe there is other important things in the state of Oklahoma. If you are a believer in Christ, then your faith is not going to be measured by a monument at our state capitol. Your faith should be measured by how you live your life. And so to me, a monument is great. If it's there, sure, I'm in favor of it, no question. But I do not think we should be wasting our time on fighting for that when there's so many other pressing issues in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay, thank you, because the other question was, and dealing with that, said the general pattern from this last legislative session was that it was okay to pass legislation knowing fully that there would be a future lawsuit or challenge, and what are your thoughts about this? And I guess that you were expressing your thoughts about that, or would you like to respond to that?
I'd be glad to respond to that.
Okay.
I don't know that there is a future lawsuit, because we have a model sitting down there at Texas that has not had a problem with it. And that is part of the criteria that I put out there. Lawsuits burden the state's ability based on time and so forth like that. I don't like to do things that are just frivolous, because it takes up time to do other important things. But yet, I am not opposed to looking at those things in which other states have done and done successfully, and using that as a model for doing things ourselves.
Okay, Mr. Nahara, would you like to add anything to what you'd said?
No.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, you said. Okay, there's some controversial questions here. Well, maybe I'll ask this one first. State your position on the right to farm state question that's going to be on the ballot. Are you in favor of the right to farm state question? Why or why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a member of Oklahoma Farm Bureau. I work for Oklahoma Farm Bureau, but I would be in favor of it even if I wasn't. Our daily lives are consumed by agriculture. Everything, whether we eat, whatever it be, is involved in agriculture. Right to farm simply says that agriculture is important in the state of Oklahoma. It's not going to affect our waterways. It's not giving farmers and ranchers the options to do whatever they want. They're going to continue to do farming practices that are good for our country. I don't understand why it's controversial, but yes, I am in favor of it.
Okay, Mr. Duggar.
Right to farm is one of those things that is most likely going to go to the public vote this year, and they get to decide that also. When I begin to think about it for my own purposes as well as a potential constituency purpose, the first thing I did was seek out the counsel of Oklahoma State University and some of the professors. I was told and given a lot of information on it, but they are not taking an official stand on that. I understand that from an educator standpoint, but it also helped me with the discussion that I have trying to make a decision. That decision was simply that I believe, given a democratically developed program that has been worked out with, to have the appropriate amounts of law guidance in it, that 777, the Farm Bill, basically was the better option than not having it.
Okay, thank you. Now, here's a controversial question, and we'll start with you. We'll start with you. What are your comments on your solutions to the transgender bathroom issue in the schools?
I think that it is a decision that needs to be evaluated by the user group primarily, and never ever underestimating the majority of it. And so consequently, I think that we can meet the goals going forward on a future basis in schools and buildings, but to go back on other things and try to accomplish that, the cost of doing so is not justified for the results that will be obtained.
Okay. Mr. Nahara, what are your solutions to the transgender bathroom issue in the schools?
I would say to leave it up to the educators, to leave it up to the school systems. I think there's a lot of different scenarios. I don't think that's an issue for us in the state Senate. I think that's just a question to kind of bait one of us and saying something crazy. And so to me, I think that's up to the schools. I'll leave my answer at that.
Okay. And starting with you, if you are elected, would you be in favor of balancing the budget by taking funds from the allocated CBRI accounts for county bridges and roads?
Absolutely not. In Payne County, we are seeing so much development because of transportation. If we can't move our product across the state, across the country, our product won't move. And so, no, I do not favor taking money or funds from that, no.
Okay.
This was a question that was in the news press, and they asked us the very question. At the time I answered it there, I pointed out that those funds have majorly changed counties all over the state to provide farm-to-market roads as well as good rural roads and bridges. To change that program is not something that we should be doing to remove funds to use them elsewhere. That program has become a vital link to the overall development of the state.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll start with you with this question. Will you be open to communication from county, elected, and municipal officials in regard to proposed legislation?
Wow. Softball time. Who wouldn't be if they're running for office, okay? There's all kinds of ways to communicate, and I think I did a good job when I was on the city council of doing that. I gave people out my private cell phone that I carry with me all the time and said, call it. If you want to talk to me, we will make arrangements to get together, or we can talk on the phone. We use Facebook. We use all the social media that's available today. I really think that communications is one of the keys that we have with the people of this county, because you find out the ideas that make a difference to help provide appropriate governance to all of the people in all of the county. Every method that I can possibly do to be able to be available and to communicate with the people, I will do.
Okay. Mr. Nahara.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a great working relationship now with the county officials. I know many of them very well, and I want to say I have a great working relationship with the council I serve with, myself and Councilor Darlington. One thing we did since on council was we started council office hours. So we actually go out into the community and we set up a time so that community members can come and talk to us. They don't have to come to our city council meetings. We're going to them. And so one of my biggest things is I want to be open and I want to be accountable and I want to be accessible. And so if I need something from the county, I absolutely will talk to them. If there's a county issue that comes up, something that will affect the county, I'll absolutely go to that person and talk with them and ask how this will affect our citizens. Because at the end of the day, we've all got to work together to figure out what's best for our state.
Okay, thank you. And starting with you, what are your feelings about accepting federal Insure Oklahoma funds proposed by Governor Fallin?
Again, I think this was a news press question, and I'll repeat my same answer. If we can find state matching funds to accept federal funds, if we have the ability to match those funds, I would be in favor of looking at that. I've met with people involved in the hospital community, and so I think they know it's a good option. And so if we can find those funds, I would be in favor of accepting that.
This person also added, if not, how can we meet the health care needs of the poor?
So I don't have to answer that because I answered the other part.
I'd say that's right.
I think, in my opinion, I think that's one of the closest solutions. I think that's a real solution. We just have to figure out how to fund that state match, whether that be with a cigarette tax or some other tax of people that are going to use the healthcare system a lot. And so, again, I think that's probably one of the best options, but definitely in favor of looking at others.
Okay, Mr. Duggar.
Oklahoma is one of those states that receives more money than they send up to Washington. That helps our economy. That helps us to get things back that are going to benefit the people of Oklahoma. In this situation of a dire budget, we have the opportunity to recover some of those funds, and I think the recovery of those, as I said in the paper, is very important. Therefore, I would be in favor of it. I don't think the part about the other side is the other question is completely different, because we're saying both of us are saying actually that we would do everything possible to have the funds in here to support that properly, knowing that health care is important to the people of Oklahoma, and obviously knowing that health care in Oklahoma has not had a stellar reputation of being affordable and accessible to the people of Oklahoma, and I'd like to see that changed.
Okay. Mr. Duggar, what is your opinion about rolling back state income tax cuts to reduce future budgetary cuts?
We talked about this today earlier in the forum we had with the Rotary Club. I think a lot of the problem on this particular issue is that when drafted, the program did not necessarily pick up timing issues and evaluation difference. As a result, what's happened on this, you've gotten a shift to where when one set of values that were the criteria of a determining come together with a dropping revenue, they didn't have the money to fund it. That's an issue that should be solved by being able to adjust the tweaking of that group. Now, given that situation, we need to be able to adjust that particular part of the guideline. That would have slowed down the taxing increase or tax decrease for this past period to a later period and more better able us to meet our budget requirements in the past year. It'll help us in the future. So if we get a proper matching of things in an accounting standpoint, it should improve significantly. And I believe that will be one of the cures to our problems in the budget.
Okay, and I want to remind our listeners that you can call in or text your questions to 405-332-6063. Mr. Nahara, you want to answer that question?
Will you go ahead and read it for me?
What is your opinion about rolling back state income tax cuts to help reduce future budgetary cuts?
So I think we all want lower taxes, but I think if we have a $1.3 billion budget shortfall, and if we're going to have another $1 billion shortfall next year, I think we'd be playing a political game if we said we weren't in favor of rolling those back. And so from the people I've talked to since I've started my campaign, and my wife and I, we've knocked a lot of doors in this county. A lot of people, a lot of hard Republicans are in favor of rolling back this tax. And so, in my opinion, I think it's something we have to do. We have to get our revenues back in order. And so, I think it is acceptable at this time. Yes.
Okay, we've talked a lot about budgetary needs, and this question just says, what do you think needs to be done to ensure Oklahoma has a revenue stream without hurting the working poor?
I think we need to fund our essentials and then look at the rest. I think we waste a lot of time, and I'm not going to take Mr. Duggar's response because he said this in Rotary today, but I'll agree with him because I know he'll say it. We need to work on focusing on the budget earlier in the session. We waste a lot of time on things that aren't as important as the budget. That's how we can solve some of those problems. We need to work together. We need to stop trying to send people up there that think they have every single answer. We need people to get out into their communities and talk with the experts. Until we get that going, I don't think we're going to solve the problem because we're going to keep fighting against each other.
Okay, Mr. Duggar, what do you think needs to be done to ensure that Oklahoma has a revenue stream without hurting the working poor?
I did say, as a matter of fact, earlier today that I would like to see the legislature work on issues of budget earlier to the extent possible. I'm a realist. I know some of those items are going to slide down toward the end of the session. At the same time, let's clear as many things as possible so we can get our job done in an efficient, timely manner. And I think that's very important, and that's one of the areas that I will emphasize. Now, given this budget situation that we have, our state's income tax is a progressive income tax. It obviously helps some of the people with lower income more than others. I do believe that the earned income tax credit that was changed for the lowest of those incomes could have been utilized better if it had been in another venue to where it would not have hit the poor people the way poorer people of the state of Oklahoma quite as hard as it is evidently going to.
Okay, we have a couple of more education questions. Recently, we read that the tuition has been raised for OSU and OU students. How can we make higher education affordable? How might we work with businesses to improve our current educational system? And I'll start with you, Mr. Duggar.
Okay, higher education, quite frankly, in most instances took anywhere from a 6.8 to a 7% decrease in their budgeted funds from the state of Oklahoma. What does that affect us, and how do we solve that? We have to change that allocation formula. We have to dedicate more funds to that and adjust in other areas. Part of that becomes, sure, higher education can reach out and increase tuition a little bit. K through 12 does not have that opportunity. They are more dependent upon the state. We have to take care of our K through 12 programs. They're the foundational program that will lead to better educated people and better jobs in the long run. As they come through the K through 12 program and become available to colleges, we need to stop as much as possible them having to take remedial courses. That is a waste of the students' money. Let's get them prepared well so that they can go through in a timely manner. There's lots of things, including the budgetary concerns of Oklahoma and the drop in their bond rating because of the Moody calculation, and that is unconscionable. Education needs those funds, and Oklahoma needs those funds just as badly to make sure we're considered a first-class state, not a second-class state.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nahara. The tuition has been raised recently at OU and OSU. How can we make higher education more affordable? How can we work with business to improve our current educational system?
I think the first option is to quit cutting their funds, and then I would say one thing I'd like to do is work with Career Tech. I'd like to try to get more of those college students that maybe college isn't the right choice for them, but they just feel like that's what the next step is. I think Career Tech's valuable in the state of Oklahoma. I think they offer a lot of valuable career paths that you can have, and it's a lot more inexpensive, I feel like. And so I think that would offset some of the burden with so many students attending college. And then, I just think it, again, goes back to, if we can figure out a way to help some of those families plan for the future, help them figure out ways to save, or whether that be with OLAP or whatever it is, just work towards saving for that and trying to keep those tuition down, and then funding education.
Okay. Are you in favor of sustaining funding for Oklahoma Promise, which helps low income be able to send a child to college?
Yes, yeah. That's
just kind of a yes or no question.
Yep.
What are your feelings about?
Oklahoma Promise has done a great job in helping students reach their ultimate goals. It's a proven factor that is extremely positive. We need to support it, and funding it is one of those ways of support, as well as going out into the public-private partnership arrangement and getting schools and organizations together to see the value that they will get from employees and so forth. I've had the opportunity to work with several people who went through college with the Oklahoma Promise. They're all in excellent jobs today, and they will say to the very person, every one of them says, without it, I could not have attended college. With it, I'm doing well. It's a program we need and we should fund.
Okay, thank you. I think one of our callers, said, should funding to vocational schools be decreased and transferred to public schools? Mr. Nahara?
No.
What
I
are
just
your
said
feelings
I
about
want to
that?
work on career tech, more students going to career tech. So no, I would not be in favor of taking funds away from vocational schools. No.
And transferred to public schools. Okay.
Career Tech does a lot of really good things, and they have programs that sometimes work specifically with the colleges that we have. There are programs at Career Tech that we have right now that are fully transferable with appropriate academic rigor, which is the definition of what you get with higher education in some of the other schools. You can go from Career Tech to NOC, for example, in a number of courses with the programs you've taken Career Tech. Career Tech is a vital part to our community and to our state. They need our support just as much as any of the education areas.
Okay, thank you. And I think our last question before we go to closing remarks, and this comes, I think, from a caller, to combat the time crunch that comes along with budget creating, would you support a longer legislative session? And Mr. Duggar.
I think when you get rid of some of the miscellaneous stuff that's out there in the first place that probably needs to be wiped out of committee, that's the first thing. It's much like going out and trying to check all the expenses of the various agencies, which I'm an advocate of doing first before we look at tax increases. I'm not a tax and spend person, so I think you look at expenses first. In this regard, you look at your time involvement first and what it goes to. And I think we adjust those, and if we can't get those completely to where the session stays where it is, then we can look at other things. I'm generally not in favor of having longer sessions. I do not want to be in a situation to where we fill up that time just because it's been granted.
Okay. Mr. Nahara.
Yeah, I think if we allow a longer session, I think it'll just waste more time. I mean, it's not going to change anything. I think we have to work on how the session's worked up, and so no, I wouldn't be in favor of extending it.
Okay. Well, this completes the question and answer session, and now we will move to closing statements, and the person who is going to respond first with opening is Mr. Duggar.
We've had this discussion tonight that's really important. It's really important to our state. It's really important to our future. I think when you get into these situations, you go for the most experience that you can possibly bring, and I believe I have that experience, and I have the willingness and the ability to do that. I humbly request that the people evaluate on those type of criteria, and I also humbly request that they consider me as their candidate for state senate and vote for me on the 28th of June.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nahara.
I'd also like to thank the league for the opportunity to come and talk tonight. It's been a long road. As I said before, my wife and I and many of our friends, we've knocked on a lot of doors. We've got out there and we've talked with a lot of Payne County citizens. We've walked in parades. We've sat in people's living rooms and we've talked about issues. There's no question that Mr. Duggar does have more experience than me. But I can tell you, when I ran for city council, there was someone else that had more experience than me. But I figured it out. Neither one of us are going to walk in on day one in the state capitol and know what's going on. It's going to take us time to adapt. I think, to me, the most important thing is that we need to send someone up there that's going to fight for the citizens every single day. We need to send someone up there that's going to have the passion and the heart and that has had to fight for everything in their entire life. Most of you in this room, you know about us. You know my story. You've looked at my website or you've seen my video online. You know I've had a hard life, so I'm not going to go down that road. But what I'll tell you is I'll fight for you to make sure you don't have to have that life, or that if you have kids, that they don't have to worry about the school they're going to enter because the school's going to have funds, or that when you need to go to the hospital, you don't have to worry because the hospital's going to have the funds to give you the medical care you need. I'm not a politician. When I go to the state capitol, I'm going to fight for you. That's my heart. I can get the experience. I can learn what's going to happen up there. You need to send someone who will fight for you daily. When I go to the state capitol, my wife and I, our family, will be committed to each and every one of you. My wife fights for victims every single day. She will help me fight. We will fight for this district. I humbly ask for your vote as well. I think I'm the best candidate. I want to fight for you. Please elect me on June 28th.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nahara. I would like to thank both of our candidates, Tom Duggar and Miguel Nahara, and this concludes our candidates forum this evening. And I also would like to thank the City of Stillwater and Patty Osmus for the facilities and for all of you who participated with so many questions, our listeners and those in the audience. Don't forget to vote on June the 28th, but you can also vote early on, tomorrow. You can vote tomorrow, the 23rd and 24th, at the Payne County Election Board, which is on the second floor of the Payne County Administrative Building on the corner of 6th and Duck. And remember to bring a photo ID, and if you have questions, you can phone the Election Board at 405-747-8350, or the League of Women Voters website, www.lwv.stillwater.org. Thank you, and good night.